in these criminal activities that they see on the streets, they could put themselves in harm's way. They can become a witness and have to testify during the case, the trial. And we are there to train them and say, this is what you want to do. If you do see that, for instance, the bust that occurred last week, they were able to provide us sufficient evidence, sufficient tips in order to allow us to go in and be able to bust the individuals that were dealing within that home.
You mentioned training. You do the training?
We do through our detectives. We will have
through your county appropriation. Is that how you fund it?
Yes. And I believe we invited your office and anybody. I open it up to anybody that wants to attend to speak to them, because that is a great forum to get out there and speak to the communities. On April 10th, we will have a presentation on gangs and what to be aware of in your community, to stay vigilant within your community and how to protect your community. So it's a great resource for all of us here in our local communities.
And just to jump in, so you guys understand, we try to start a crime watch from the inception of that crime watch, and we try to maintain with them that crime watch as much as we can, obviously because of funding and the fact that everyone's busy. But once we get them going, we try to stay with them and make sure everything's going well. But more importantly, the networking amongst the other crime watches, help each other in our county, has been phenomenal.
Like we say, criminals don't stay within boundaries. They're all over the place. So when one part of our county sees a crime occur, they will introduce that to all of the crime watch groups, so they are more vigilant and aware of what may occur in their local areas that this crime watch has seen more frequently. So it is a great resource.
And what's important for your panel, just so you guys know, is that funding which was cut allowed police officers to go to a week-long training. And that crime prevention practitioners course it went on for many years, has now since been depleted, and there's no such thing. I mean, you have departments, Chief DeSoy dedicated an officer to help the crime watches in the city of Wilkes-Barre, which is phenomenal, but there's not a lot of departments who can do what Wilkes-Barre does. And I'll tell you, and there's not too many officers who are certified practitioner in the crime watch groups, and you really need the training if you're going to be out there and you're going to teach these groups. I just think that the fact that the program has been depleted is hurting law enforcement and our community. It's just not fair to them. And it wasn't something that course was offered maybe 6 times a year throughout the state. So it's not something that I think it would be extremely costly for the state of Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Senator Frank. Thank you. One of the things, I'm glad to hear you talk about the efforts that private citizens can make to help ensure that they can prevent crime. One thing that I haven't heard anybody say, and which I think is important to discuss too, is one, the value of job training programs and jobs for these kids. I think that's one of the big issues we face in this economy. There are not, I mean, certainly we can do after-school programs for younger kids, but we don't necessarily have the jobs that young people, particularly those who have not perhaps attained the educational training that they need, where do they go next? I think that's part of our issue. But let me ask you this, because this is a subject that we've talked about recently at a crime summit that we held in our community, which is the city of Reading. I represent the 11th district in Berks County. What can the business community do? I mean, we all have a role to play here. What are some of the suggestions you have for the business community, or what are you seeing up here that are good ideas? Yes?
I'm glad you did this, because that's what I wanted to talk about.
Thank you.
We've been talking about the state government providing funding. We need funding for law enforcement. We need funding for the programs that were involved. All this revolves around money. But what are the communities doing? We have communities. I bet if we looked at the county records, we'd find a lot of buildings and residents that have unpaid taxes for not just 1 or 2 years, 10, 15 years, where the income hasn't come from these residents. We have landlords that are absentee from New York, Philadelphia, that don't even participate within our communities. There needs to be something done by the local communities to clean up these blighted homes. We're seeing them almost every day on the news reported. Arsons, buildings burning, building homes right next to them because they're abandoned. They're part of the blight to the area. We have lost, in the past 5 years, 6% of our population. Our combined income in this area is 1/2 of what the state income is. We cannot, gain money to afford these services, to provide the police protection that we need if we are in a blighted condition, that the communities themselves are not taking action to take care of this, that the businesses are not taking care of this, that they're not reaching out and trying to establish better communications. Look at all the colleges that we have in this area. There's over 11 colleges and universities in Lackawanna and Luzerne County. And where do these college students go? They leave the area because there's nothing here for them. Therefore, income leaves this area. And we need that. We need to be able to do that. The programs that we talked about, I have over 38 college students involved in a mentoring program. They don't receive any money at all. The benefit they get from it is the experience that they are learning from mentoring these young people. 48 young people, 13 from Hazleton, bust up from Hazleton through a grant that we have to provide transportation for these young people, who have said to me, the 6-week program that we have that meets twice a week is not long enough. We need it longer. What are we going to do after this program ends? We as citizens in these communities need to start taking back and burdening the responsibility, not looking to the state for handouts. We need the business community, we need our local municipalities to step forward to help these agencies do their job.
As we talked about in Reading, so I thought I'd mention here, there's an organization in Altoona called Our Town that has been extremely successful. And Altoona is a similar city to the cities we have here. And basically what its function is, it's the business leaders got together and they raise funds for law enforcement. They've been able to provide money for overtime, training, equipment, and things like that, and really been a tremendous assistance. Also in mentoring programs, and it's been a tremendous success. And it's, unfortunately, it's the only place I've really seen it take off. But if you wanted a role model for how community businesses can get involved, Our Town is really what I would point to.
We have a group that's going there to visit.
Yes, I know. It's really encouraging to see what's going on there.
John? I would also like to point out that I think you're right, Senator Schwenk, because I think the business community is largely an untapped resource, and I believe that many of them, when approached, do really understand what's at stake here, and they realize that they have as much stake in the future of this community, even if it is for a reason as their own profit. They understand it. We have been reaching out at this point to some of the larger national corporations which have located in and around the Hazleton area. And the responses we've gotten are very encouraging, at least initially, and some of the programs that we have discussed and that they have expressed an interest in working with us in developing, including job training programs, I think are going to be revolutionary. I mean, stay tuned. We really believe we have something that has been largely untapped.
Senator Blake.
Thank you, Lisa. First of all, I just want to thank my colleague John and for this distinguished panel and for everything I've learned here so far. But just some quick comments. And I want to obviously express deep thanks to our Attorney General and to our State Police Commissioner. And the Commissioner was kind enough to note dialogue that we've had about the health of our cities. Part of my learning here has to do with the resource issue, which is pervasive. I'm encouraged that we have a systematic and integrated response to systematic criminality that we're seeing in our communities, but there are things that have also been expressed here that don't cost us much, and that we could have a better allocation of existing resources within our schools, for instance. It was mentioned that there are things we can do, but just as an example of, and the Commissioner once said to me before an Appropriations Committee, when we're flat funded, we're losing ground. So we know about that resource issue, but there are things that we can do at the state level that allow us to take what would be alternative financial burdens off our cities, or, for instance, in the case of law enforcement, this pension issue. And the fragmentation of pension issue, there might be an opportunity, and the FOP has actually come to speak with me about this, meaning that we could create some efficiencies. If we can create some efficiencies on how scarce dollars are allocated or where those resources are being committed, it could create a better opportunity for the steering of additional resources to the boots on the ground and to some of the other programs. So there are things that I think we can do at the state level that relate to the fiscal health of our communities, and one of the things we can look to are these, what I would call, really non-specific criminality or law enforcement actions that are burdensome to our municipalities, and that we need to deal with how we can affect state policy. It doesn't mean that we're mandating regionalization. It doesn't mean that we'd be, essentially being the heavy hand of state government to force something, but we can encourage something and deal with the economics of both law enforcement and prosecution in a way that would deal better with the economics of crime. And there are things that I think we can do at the state level, so I want to commend everyone for your participation, and thank you for that. Thank you, Lisa.
Senator Wozniak.
Thank you. Is there crime stoppers here in Luzerne County? Crime stoppers. No, because I'm a member of it, and my staff guy's the president. Actually, we created it, but it's worked very well. I mean, money's a motivator for everybody. We even had a person turn himself in because he saw his name on television, but we didn't give him the reward. But it worked. But I just wonder if you have a crime stoppers. The other thing is, and I'm not my education isn't behavioral scientist and science, but I'm going to make the assumption that if somebody keeps their nose clean until they're a senior from high school, their chances of getting into trouble are greatly diminished. I would think so, because I'm looking back at my high school days. I was so busy with stuff that I didn't have time to get in trouble. And I think it goes back to how do we keep those young people busy. And the last thing I want to bring is cameras. I know we talked about business. They've got cameras all over the place. I never understood why in a bank, my son has a computer and it takes perfectly great pictures that he set up around the house when he was a young teenager, and the banks are all grainy in a technology day. But are we using cameras more in strategic locations in our cities where are trouble spots, so that you have many more eyes instead of the physical boots on the ground, but now we have cameras attached to computers? And I'm just curious if we're using that as a tool.
We have an outstanding camera system here in Wilkes-Barre, so I'll hand that over to Chief DeSoy.
Yeah, our Hawkeye camera system, which sometimes comes under criticism because oftentimes people don't understand how the camera system is supposed to be deployed. Our camera system, we have roughly 200 cameras, X percentage of them running at any given time. Very difficult maintenance system, as systems this large would be. But at any given time, we could have up to 200 cameras throughout the city. And we do put them in what we perceive to be strategic locations. But again, with a camera, oftentimes people think the camera is going to have the clarity that you and I are looking at each other. It's not designed for that. It's designed to assist law enforcement in doing our job. We need to see what happened, so we need a broad view of the area. We then still have to use, old-fashioned police techniques to determine who you are and, who the suspects are and so on and so forth. What it does, though, is once we identify the people, we're able to look at and actually see what happened. It tells us the real story of what happened there. And we use it to great success. And I think probably in the very near future, the district attorney will be making an announcement of a particular case where it was extremely helpful. But yes, Wilkes-Barre has been behind the camera systems. Hazleton's looked at them with us. We're glad to share our technology with anybody who wants it. It is an expensive technology, a very expensive technology. The upkeep on it is difficult, and certainly a lot of state funding has gone into it, gaming funds, so on and so forth. But I think it has paid for itself. So to answer your question, Senator, yes, we do use it.
And I was just able to redirect money from community development to figure out where to get funding. So we'll probably be adding another 30 cameras this year in the city of Hazleton. They'll actually be the first cameras that the city owns. We've partnered with businesses in the city where businesses purchase the cameras. The police department has the back end, but we can't move their cameras. Whereas now with this community development money, we'll be able to put those cameras in strategic locations and move them when we're going to target a neighborhood or move them as we please. So I'm looking forward to actually having.
We're talking about that back home. We have a little hotbed, and we're talking about using cameras to try to deflate the situation.
Right.
Senator Costa.
Just a quick question. On drug forfeiture money, I would reference the district attorneys. Are we too restrictive with respect to the use of those dollars, or is the time come where we need to sort of broaden the use of those dollars, maybe getting them into the communities, into the neighborhoods? Is that something we should be looking at? We're broadening the opportunities and uses of those resources?
It would always benefit us if it wasn't as restrictive, but from my standpoint, I use that money mainly just to help the local police departments and the local businesses and I should say services. So if there is something going on and they approach me on it, say an organization wants to have a big party in the middle of the square in Wilkes-Barre, and it's to an anti-drug campaign, I will donate money to help support that. I, on a quite frequent basis, get letters from local police departments who, like we keep discussing, they're being cut left and right as well. So they need the funding somehow to get the equipment, the weapons, all that they need to do their job. And I try to fund them as much as I possibly can.
Yes, Senator, I can tell you that I don't have a problem with the way things are currently handled with the forfeiture money. There are probably three main areas that we utilize the money for. One is for training and education of officers. Secondly would be for some equipment. And thirdly, maybe buy money for some of the local departments. And those are the three areas that I utilize the most, and I'm fine with that.
So you have more than enough uses for the money.
Not enough money, but more than enough uses,
money.
yes.
Yeah, I'm in agreement there.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Senator, I have seen some misuses of that.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, where municipalities have been given that money and it's been put into the general fund and not allocated to law enforcement agencies that had been involved in the forfeitures themselves. So there's been some abuse of that.
Thank you.
Senator Furlong.
Yeah. First of all, good afternoon, everybody. I hail from the city of Pittsburgh, and I have a very unusual state Senate district, 3 counties. So I have the core of the city of Pittsburgh with some of the most disadvantaged communities. I have some of the wealthiest communities in the state and rural communities, farmland. So I see the complexity and also the diversity of drugs and the crime problem that we have. And I came here today because I think I want to reinforce Senator Udicek's efforts to make clear that the problems that we have are not unique to Center City, Philadelphia, or Center City, Pittsburgh. It's really a conflict and a crisis that all of us have to face, regardless of the size or the complexity or the demographics of our communities. I'm usually also the person that says things that are unpopular, and I do want to say a couple things that are unpopular, and I'm only speaking for myself, not my Democratic colleagues to my left. At some point in this country, we have to have an adult discussion about the so-called war on drugs. You know, we've spent billions of dollars in failed policies. We have 2 million people in jail that we can no longer afford to even keep and maintain in jails, even though they deserve to be there for a long time. And I don't have a quick answer to that. There are bills that talk about decriminalization or legalization of certain drugs, such as marijuana. This is not the forum of the debate to have that. I throw that out because at some point we really have to come to grips with what is actually working. And I do think, and I'm very clear and very specific, that I do think we have failed, that we have lost the war on drugs. And I think we have to begin to have an adult discussion in this country, not a knee-jerk discussion, but an adult discussion about that so-called war on drugs and whether or not we should begin anew and set some new policies. On the other hand, like everybody in this room, and including the honorable members of the police departments that are here, and certainly those are law enforcement from the district attorney, our job every day is to go out and fight this battle. So it's almost like a schizophrenic role that I have, because on one hand, I'm an active block watch person. I've been working on crime prevention efforts for 25 years and longer. So despite having said what I just said, we're caught between the paradox of still going out, doing our jobs, and doing our best to correct behavior and hold people accountable. But just a few other things. You know, when you think about how many people are hooked on drugs because of legal pharmacy, you know, a lot of young people are getting drugs just from the medicine cabinet. And somehow I think some of our programs aren't addressing the harsh reality that young kids are getting into medicine cabinets and beginning to get hooked on drugs. It's not always the corner street drug trafficker or somebody at school or the so-called gang. That's the harsh reality we have to try to find and expand our community-oriented policing strategies to address that. At some point, we got to hold parents accountable. You know, we're all talking about programs and funding. Look, I'm a social liberal. I'm willing to raise taxes to pay for programs that I believe in, whether it's after-school programs at the church or interventionist strategies for community-oriented policing, cameras, you name it. I'm willing to take a vote, raise revenue, and make sure we have more officers on the street, more creative resources and tools to fight and organize a true community-oriented policing strategy. But that's not the body politic right now. So I do think that we have to hold parents accountable. We have district justices in the city of Pittsburgh that are not accountable, other than more recently, where if the kid's truant in grade school, that should be the first early warning signal that something's wrong with that family. And at some point, the school districts and the magisterial district justices have to be working together in a more concerted way. So that's kind of all of our job, and that doesn't always happen. Landlords in the city of Pittsburgh, and I think the officers here and the commanders can tell you, you may have a great neighborhood, but if you have 4 dysfunctional houses in that neighborhood, you wipe the whole darn place out. And, you know, one thing we're trying to do in the city of Pittsburgh is to go after that landlord. If you have 911 calls, and there's 230 911 calls, you know, I think in 20 years I've had 1 911 call in my house because somebody fell off a roof, a professional roofer, and it scared me to death. But, you know, we know statistically what problem houses there are. We should be able to go after that landlord and charge him or her money to get rid of that tenant, whatever the profile is, or pay for that additional police protection or that EMS truck that has to come out every time. And, you know, I just think there are new methods of fighting back. But in the end, I think we have to activate parents to be accountable. If you want to have kids and you have kids, if you're a parent, 2 parents, if you're a guardian, if you're the aunt or the uncle or the grandmother taking care of that family, I'm not describing what a traditional family is, we have to hold those people accountable. They have to become involved in mentoring and tutoring and matriculating that child through the time that they hopefully get here and get to meet Professor Lindenmuth and become involved in criminal justice and become a law enforcement officer. I could go on, but this was a good discussion, and I think we need to try to focus some of the energies at the state Senate level, especially on this area of resources for community-oriented policing and also this issue of regionalization. You know, too many of our state police, I'm Minority Chair of Law and Justice, we don't have enough state police. We have a community like Hempfield Township in Senator Ward's district, a Republican, by the way. I think they have 60, 70,000 people in the town. They don't want to pay for a police force. Great. You don't want to pay for a police force? You don't want to have taxes? Don't expect the state police to keep coming out there and not contribute. So we have a lot of issues, and I appreciate everybody's attentiveness today, and especially I applaud all the men and women here of law enforcement. And please, Godspeed and be safe each and every day you're out there. Thank you.
Just one thing, and I'm glad you brought up the truancy issue. I just wanted to be aware, you to be aware that I am currently working with a local District Justice Hallisey and Judge Gartley on starting a truancy program here in Luzerne County, and going into Lackawanna County, Judge Harhut has a wonderful program up there. So we're trying to get that program, bringing it down, because we do believe.
Put some parents in jail. Put them in jail for a day.
We do believe that
right?
You need to hold parents accountable for what their kids
agrees.
Do.
Put their butts in jail.
As you can see, the senator from Pittsburgh would never be arrested for not speaking in public. Chief DeAndre.
One comment. Thank you, Senator. Because I'm not sure when I'll ever sit with 7 senators again. So that being the case, the one thing that I don't think that we broached yet that I think you can all easily do is consider some laws. In the city of Hazel, we talked about blighted properties or some of the problems that we have. The city can't afford to take the properties. we've already had meetings where we tried to figure out what it would cost the city to go knock that down. We don't even have the equipment. So if we actually become the landlord, we've got to hire a company. And then DEP was polite enough to tell us they will fine us if we burn the debris, because that's against the, you know, the regulations. But I look at it and think maybe there's a way, and I don't have the exact answer, but maybe there's a way through laws that we could make it easier for us to take those properties and be able to either do something with them or have them knocked down.
Just real quickly, one thing. I mean, one thing we've recently done in the city of Pittsburgh is when we demo a house and we know that that landlord lives in the suburbs, we go after legally and begin to attach their other properties.
Right. But as far as the money goes for taking down derelict housing, I was a former county commissioner. What we did was use community block grant funds from the county in a program to acquire and to demolish those buildings. And then we would deed those back to the city. Now, with new legislation that we've recently passed, that we can create land banks on a county level, there can be better coordination of how that land is reused. Our program wasn't perfect, but we were able to take down some of that awful housing, places where vagrants, drug dealers, so forth, were hanging out.
Sure, because that's the same thing we talk about, anti-gangs, anti-bullying. Part of it is to get these kids to not want to be involved in something, we've got to raise their self-esteem, their self-respect. And if we could make the community a little bit more of a beautiful place to live, maybe after college, they'll want to come back.
Good point.
No, I was going to mention the land banks that, and listen, there are plenty of models. You know, the city of Philadelphia has done some great work dealing with tangled titles and dealing with, you know, blight and trying to take, you know, one of the things I learned in the city of Scranton when they were going through their fiscal crisis, that a lot of the land, you know, that's unproductive, if you will. There are issues that they need to deal with in terms of trying to dispose of that property and make it more productive. And listen, the moment you have a broken window, as the senator mentioned, it's like a cancer on that neighborhood, and it grows if you don't arrest it. So we have work to do to try to help our local government officials. Again, a resource issue, Chief, so we have to work on that.
Just as a follow-up to what Senator Blake and Schwenk talked about, Senator Wozniak and the Senators Blake and Schwenk have been working on our Senate Democratic GSP program, where we have a series of legislation to give local government the tools to be able to make them more sustainable as we go forward, and making certain that they have the resources to do the things that they need to do, but more importantly, not allow us to waste resources on process that chew up a lot of resources and take away our ability to provide the services that we need to provide in our communities, particularly police services or community services. So that's something our caucus has been very much aware of and involved in, and we've pulled together a series of bills we have introduced through our GSP program. So,
as we begin to close the panel portion of this program, let me just offer this. It's clear that there are not Democrat or Republican solutions to crime. There are not conservative or liberal solutions to crime. There are community solutions, and we are all part of this community, whether it's this great Commonwealth or whether it's Luzerne County in northeastern Pennsylvania, Carbon County, Monroe County, and Lackawanna County, whether it's our neighborhoods. We have to find solutions as leaders, as parents, as members of the school district and of the parish. We have to find solutions. So I think today was a very important step in that process as we talk about changing laws in Pennsylvania, whether it's putting Pennsylvania's first anti-gang law on the books, or whether it's finding a way to help with nuisance properties, whether it's finding funding for the DA's office or funding for building bridges in the Hazleton Integration Project. All those resources, all those decisions are going to be made in a collective fashion, and you were part of that today. So I want to thank you for coming out. Thank you to my colleagues for coming out and sharing in this experience in fighting crime here in northeastern Pennsylvania.
Yeah, now we're going to open it up for, I knew there were some individuals in the audience that kind of wanted to make some comments. We have about 10, 15 minutes for that. Just state your name.
Hi, my name is Bob Kalabowski. I own Citywide Towing Company in Wilkes-Barre, and I'm also a taxpayer. And I wanted to just open up on one sentence from the chairman, or from the president of the Wilkes-Barre Taxpayers Association. Due to the time of this, he was not able to attend, but he wants to say that the Taxpayers Association protests Chief DeSoy being here, and the citizens of this city If you just take a good look at the Times Artist Citizens Voice today, you'll see why the citizens have lost faith in our Wilkes-Barre Police Department, and especially our chief. And I just wanted to open with that. But I'd like to say that in the last few months, when you talk about helping law enforcement, just in the last several months, I've helped the police catch 2 armed robbers, attempted armed robber. For the state police, 2 drug dealers with a stolen vehicle, a guy from a stabbing. I helped with Hanover Township, and several other things. But when we talk about our camera system here in the city, now I know this is going to be hard to believe, but we had a man who robbed a bank 2 blocks from here, and he did have a good disguise on. He had purple shorts, white shirt, and blonde hair. And when we talk about how great our camera system is, I happened to be towing a vehicle, and I detained the bank robber, and I caught him. And also, when we talk about your Crime Watch, or not the Crime Watch, the Crime Stoppers, I helped catch a person several years ago, and the way I got my reward, which I donated to somebody for medical bills, was I had to sue Crime Stoppers because they wouldn't give me the money. But just so you understand, our town is a sewer. My neighbor, who has a mini mart down on the Hazel Mart at Blackman and Hazel Street, has been robbed 5 times. One time it was with a shotgun, just the recent one was with a handgun, and I believe I helped catch the suspect who did it. We caught him the next day. He just walked through nonchalantly, and we helped catch him for the Wilkes-Barre Police Department. But our town is a sewer. Our police department is for.
Thank you. Can we, because I know there's other individuals that want to speak. We get your message. I got it.
All right, well, just let me close on this. Attorney General Kane, first of all, it's nice to see you here, and Stephanie Salavantis, but just so you understand, a lot of times I can't make my point in a little bit of time here, but what I'd like you to do is stop and get a copy of the Citizen's Voice today and see why our citizens have lost faith in our police department. It's a corrupt organization, and that's all I got to say.
All right, thank you so much. There's another individual that wanted to speak?
Hello, my name is Craig Buddy. I want to thank everybody here for showing up and informing us a lot. I just also want to touch on one thing. They were talking about getting the business community involved, okay? This gentleman over here said about getting them to donate, help, with the kids and everything, mentoring programs or, work programs. What we also need is to get the business community to come in with sustaining wage jobs, okay? Not low-income jobs, okay? This way, the people, when they come out of college, they have a decent job to stay in the area, okay? That's what we need. Also with these houses, okay, I spoke to Senator Utachak about that. There was a program in New York City where they started 30 years ago, okay? And I could take you back to the areas today, all right? They look like small little communities that are beautiful, okay? People owe taxes. People, delinquent bills, or they just walked away from the houses. The city took the house from them, okay? Dissolved them of all the back taxes, okay? Sold it to the community, all right, for $1, okay? But they gave it to working people, not investors, okay? They helped them get low-income government grants and low-interest loans to fix those houses back up, okay? Now you give the people, instead of renting a house, you give them a house that they own, they take pride in, and that helps keep the community the way it should be.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any?
Hi, I live in the city of Wilkes-Barre. I'm a parent. I'm a journalism student, so I came here today for that too. I also worked with Reverend Walker with building bridges. I'm a lifelong resident of Wilkes-Barre, so I have a vested interest. I have a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old, which I learned today are targets for gang activities. The one question that I had was, instead of focusing on legislation, is there anything going on to boost the economy, which would bring in more taxes, a higher standard of living, and other things that are known to decrease crime in the areas across the country?
As was mentioned earlier, and I think by D.A. Tobias, I mean, as you know, we've had a national recession for 3 years. It's been longer here in northeastern Pennsylvania. The Scranton, Wilkes-Barre, Hazleton metropolitan area has the highest unemployment rate for the past 3 years in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Everyone on this stage is trying to do something about that, to turn that around. In Luzerne County, we created, for the first time, a small business loan program, a revolving loan program, so that businesses that want to expand and add jobs and add to the economy can do that. The Luzerne County Small Business Loan Program, it saved 22 businesses when the flood hit us in 2011, kept 200 families working in northeastern Pennsylvania. We're going to discuss, as we go through the budget process, a transportation funding bill that's going to be very important to our economy in northeastern Pennsylvania. We need to start making those kind of critical investments, whether it's in education, whether it's in the infrastructure, roads and bridges, or technology in terms of creating jobs. The Greater Hazleton area and the Chamber of Commerce and Can-Do has done a great job in terms of attracting jobs to our area, and certainly here in Greater Wilkes-Barre and in Lackawanna County. But more needs to be done. We certainly, because of our skill training that Senator Schwank talked about, we need to change the skill sets. We need to change our economy here in northeastern Pennsylvania. But there's no question about it, and it's been said for a long time. The best social program is a good job, and we need to create more good jobs in northeastern Pennsylvania.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? Okay, great. We're going to conclude this program today. Thank you so much. I'm coming away with learning a lot from the individuals that are in this. You work every day in our communities trying to solve this issue of, gang violence, and it's remarkable. I'm trying to think what we could do, and we do this I'm trying to tell you what we do after we have hearings like this. We'll go back, we'll review our notes, and we'll try to figure out how we can either legislate or do something with the Attorney General's office, with the Commissioner to, what I'm seeing is coordinate some activities. I am a big firm believer in the front-end investment is so much better than the back-end expenses. So I think, coming away from this, if we can invest more in our children early on, I think they have the best chance to succeed. I also want to commend you because my mother, she, just a week or two ago, there was a meth lab that exploded in the neighborhood, and this was a neighborhood that you would never expect that activity. Right in the heart of the city of Bethlehem. I grew up in that neighborhood. I would have never expected that to happen. Her frustration was, they're like, can we do something? Can we have a crime watch group? And there's not that availability for somebody to help them in that neighborhood. So some of the things that you've been talking about comes down to funding and how we train police officers and so forth. But that was my comment. I just wanted to turn it over to Kathleen. I know she has a couple comments. And then Senator Yuchek, you can close it up.
Thank you very much, and thank you everyone for attending. I think what we've learned here today is that it is everyone's problem, and it comes down to not just one thing. It doesn't come down to one drug strike task force or one after-school program. It comes down to everyone being involved, from the parents, the students, the children, the teachers, law enforcement, social service agencies, mentoring programs, jobs, our legislators. It is all of our problem. And I went to a school last week in the West, and we were talking about the rash of overdoses due to prescription drug abuse by the children in the school. And I said to them, parents, you have medicine cabinets that are filled with prescription drugs. I do too. You don't even know they're there. We need to clean them out. Let's start there. We need to teach our children that a drug abuser or a drug dealer is not just the guy on the corner that has the long hair and the white van that we all teach them to recognize. It could be that person their friend handing them a pill that they aren't prescribed, and that's how their prescription drug starts. And people got a little bit angry with me. But I believe I'm like Senator Furlow. I try not to just be popular. I really want to solve the problem. So I think that this is a great first start. When we recognize the problem, we can solve the problem. When we work together and we understand what everyone else has to offer and how we can best coordinate, and that this is one big ball of wax, this is a coordinated approach, then we get things done. But I really want to commend the public for being here because you are the start. So thank you very much.
Thank you again, and as we close, let me just bring this image to your minds. The kitchen table is probably the best place where we can really tackle this problem of crime in northeastern Pennsylvania. If the extended family unit is talking around that kitchen table, and having a conversation with their kids in terms of crime, drugs, gang activity. If that conversation is happening around that kitchen table, those children are going to be raised with certain, what I like to call kitchen table values that I learned from my parents in Plymouth Township. And those common sense kitchen table values are boiled down in my mind to really, in terms of government, what government should be doing and what it should be focused on. It boils down to those kitchen table values. Give people an opportunity to have a good job. Let them have an opportunity to get their kids to have a great education, and give them the opportunity to live in a safe neighborhood. If we can focus on those 3 kitchen table values as a General Assembly, as the administration, in terms of the governor, we're going to go a long way to solving most of the problems in our community. So thank you. Thank you for being part of our kitchen table discussion today, and we'll continue our conversation as we go forward to fight crime here in northeastern Pennsylvania. Thank you very much.